Yo, how are you doing, folks? Welcome to episode 129 of the Simpa Life Podcast. I hope you are keeping well. Hope you've had a wonderful couple of weeks. I know I was off last week. I had a little bit of I suppose, somewhere there's a combination, but 50-50. Last minute guest cancellation, bit of my own mental health. And I was like, you know what, fuck it, taking the week off because I've got two for the price of one for guests for this week, folks. So yeah, you get twice your fill. I know it's winter and it's dark and it's cold and it's a little bit miserable. So for the next few hours, we're going to entertain you with some truth. So yeah, today's guests, I'll introduce immediately because I think there's going to be some hella conversations to be had here. So yeah, today's guests are two Californian brothers with over 50 years of combined experience navigating the state's ever-changing lawful cannabis industry as criminal defense lawyers. Together, they are known as the Pop Brothers at Law. They are Marc and Craig Wasserman. How are you doing, guys?
Wonderful. Fantastic. Wonderful. Doing great this morning.
Perfect. So it's probably tough how dark it is in my studio right now. It is evening here in the northeast of England. Obviously, we don't get quite as much sunshine as you guys. And I suppose we kind of have a similar cannabis system in some ways. It's just from the opposite ends of the spectrum. Our police really don't have the ability to enforce it up here, so they kind of look the other way. Whereas I suppose California is kind of being driven towards liberalism, maybe partly by greed and a bit of consumerism. But yeah, let's we'll delve into sort of your guys' stories, and then let's tear California's system in your arsehole, because I think there's quite a few things to be commented on there. But yeah. For the people that don't know, obviously the people that have not seen your quite informative, quite humorous social media presence, they're not aware of the work that you guys have been up to for a few decades now. Could you give us sort of a bit of background about how you guys became the Pop Brothers at Law?
Well, I started practicing in 1996. My brother was 10 years before me in 1986. He had always practiced in the business contract arena, mergers and acquisitions, and all those types of things. I was always doing criminal defense. In 1996, when I started, Prop 215 came into effect in 1996 and was being badly misused and misinterpreted.
Prop 215 was California's quasi-legalization for medicinal purposes.
For cannabis patients. And cannabis patients were getting arrested left and right. And so I've been representing people in that realm ever since 1996, the whole spectrum of criminal defense. And so we had maintained our separate offices for many, many years until 2015, when my brother's son, my nephew, forced us to go on Instagram after we eradicated 2 cases and 7 different felonies based on cannabis that he was utilizing as a business that he was doing properly back then. And we had always taught him, you shut the fuck up when cops ask questions. And that right there was the basis for us being able to get these cases dismissed. And he said, you guys need to jump on social media and teach people no one's doing it. And we gave some pushback for a minute or two. We finally got on 2015 and basically just started teaching people what we've always taught people in our legal careers on how to peacefully engage with law enforcement. We had no idea that it was going to, I guess, blow up in our face. And, here we now we sit here with, across social media, over 1 million followers, and the shut the fuck up message known as the script, the 25 words that you say when the cops pull you over, has resonated. And that's pretty much the long and short of how we got to where we're at right now.
Yeah, the way that the initial entree into Instagram was my son, and he had called us up in 2018. Well, when was it?
January
2015. He said, you guys got to come. He hangs out with the likes of Be Real. You know who Be Real is? Cypress Hill. And he had a internet TV presence. And there was a kid on that show called Adam Ill, and he did a show called Getting High With. And it was a talk show for stoners. He sat around, he took bong loads, rips, joints, did this, talked about shit, and he wanted to talk about the new law going into effect, the legalization effort in 2016. And he couldn't get any lawyers that would come on his show and smoke weed with him. And my son's like, dude, my dad and uncle. So he calls us up, and my brother's like, okay, let's go. And I'm like, wait a minute. I've been an attorney 20-something fucking years. I have my medical card. It was medical back then only. And I'm like, I don't know, what's the state bar going to do if they get a hold of me smoking on whatever? And we thought about it, and I went, you know what? I've got a medical card. It's legal in where we're doing it. It's a private premise, and everybody has their cards, and fuck it, let's do it. And so we went on this show with this kid, and we hour and a half interview with streamers and people watching and asking questions. And a lot of it, I mean, one of the major things that we were trying to bring to the table wasn't even necessarily the STFU word initially. It was, we're going to break the stigma. We're going to show that professionals can smoke, whether it's all day, once a day, twice a day, never, whatever. It doesn't matter. We can medicate, smoke, and do our jobs to the fullest. And, it's not a problem. We're not afraid to say, oh, no, he smokes weed. But someone can have a drink and a martini and a cocktail. That's okay. So that was the other message that's kind of getting lost in all this, is breaking the stigma of cannabis use. So we decided to do it. We did it at Be Real Studios. We came up with, well, we'd already come up with Pot Brothers at Law a few years earlier, just kind of fucking around, teasing that, hey, we really are brothers, because people ask that. Are you really brothers? Yeah. Are you really lawyers? We're really lawyers, and we really smoke pot. So that's kind of how that came up. And then just a little side story on our name, pot_brothers_law. When I made up the page, I didn't realize a space meant an underscore. So it's pot_brothers_at_law_. And that's kind of, and then from there, we decided, what are we going to do? My son, we come from the ground in representing and dealing with the cannabis industry 30 years back. So we know everybody in that side, the legacy side, whatever people call it nowadays. I crack up the legacy side. And he's like, Dad, no one gives out free advice. Lawyers always want to pay. You got to pay $500. You got to do this and give out some free advice. We do it anyways. We tell all their friends all this. And that's kind of how it was born. And we started we had 15 seconds to do these legal tips. And it's kind of funny, the progression of how fast we got with the 15 seconds all the way now. It's, minute, 2, 3 minutes, whatever it is nowadays. But that's kind of how it started. And then it just, as my son said, it was organic. It just organically happened. Didn't buy followers, I had asked him at one point, he was hanging out with Wiz Khalifa. And hey, have Wiz shout us out. I don't know. I'm an old fucking guy, right? What do I know about the etiquette? He's like, Dad, no, you can't do that. These guys charging 10 grand for a shout out. And then sure enough, sometime later, organically, that started happening. And so that's really how we were born into, what we fell ass backwards on is this social media.
And so from 2015 to 2018, we amassed like 120,000 followers on Instagram. And I had put us with a presence on all the other social media platforms that were out there. We weren't active on them, but we just had our name there and a page, like on Facebook and YouTube and, everywhere. And because for attorneys, we looked at it as giving out some free advice, and maybe we'll get some clients out of it. It's free advertising, right? You don't have to pay for advertising, just put it up, and somebody needs something, so the notifications are set so we don't miss anything. Because, we get I got raided last night. I got a DUI, whatever it is. And so December 25th, 2018, my Facebook notifications just started ding, 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 and it wouldn't stop. And I'd never seen that. I thought my phone was broken and what the hell was going on. And I was able to finally get onto Facebook and track down what was going on, which was we had started doing what we call Shut the Fuck Up Friday videos, where every Friday we would tell a little story in the post. And this particular one was about 3 people who worked at an illegal, unlicensed shop, and it got raided. 2 of them said, I volunteer here, and they got completely busted. The 3rd guy shut the fuck up because he followed us, came to us, and we were able to get that case dismissed. And so that particular
because
video,
they didn't know whether he was a patient, someone who walked in to use the bathroom. They had no idea, and he didn't say anything. And it was funny too, because the district attorney was not happy with us, because tell him, there was like 15 people, right, who got charged. 14 of them pled guilty to some stupid infraction and paid a $25 fine. And we're like, we're going to go to trial. You can't prove it's a fucking ticket, guys. No, we're going to trial. And then when they said all these other people pleaded guilty, we go, well, shit, they didn't have any attorneys. He goes, no, they all had attorneys. And we're like, really? So we always give that advice too. Watch who you're hiring. It's called bleed them and plead them. Take their money, plead them out the first day. That's a good payday. We take the money. We don't plead out. We can make the case go for a year or two before, the longer a criminal case goes, the better for the criminal. Or the better, no, put it this way.
They're not criminals.
It's better for the person charged.
That's the thing.
Good clarifier.
It's better for them business-wise, not as good for the attorney, because you charge, let's just, $2,500 for something and you go one time. Yeah, that's a lot of money. But us, we might go 4 or 5 appearances to make sure we get the best possibility of getting the case dismissed, thrown out, a better deal. Because the longer it goes, they want to get rid of the case, as opposed to the first day, they're going to give you a deal. And if you take it, I mean, to me, that's malpractice. But so that's kind of how we operate.
So that video got posted on a Facebook page called Respect My Region, which was these young guys out of Seattle, Washington. And it was like a hip hop media news page. And they posted it. And then a guy named Roger Stone.
You know Roger Stone, right?
Yeah.
Of all people, he blew us up.
Wow.
He reposted it and said, these should be my attorneys. And that's when he had the gag order and he had just gotten raided and all that stuff. And he said, these should be my attorneys, reposted it. Within a week, we got called Michael Rappaport on his podcast. MTV, Ridiculousness, wanted to use the video. Tosh.0 called us. He wanted to interview us, and we went on that show. And that from there just blew us up. And since then, we've been doing lots of different shows. We did Snoop Dogg's new show recently. We've had a lot of great individual guests pop in for our Shut the Fuck Up Fridays script review to say shut the fuck up, like Matthew McConaughey and Killer Mike. And, there's a long list. And getting that kind of traction just set us over the stratosphere with everything. And like my brother said earlier, we had no clue any of this was going to happen. We just kind of riding that wave, and we continue to ride it.
Wow. Awesome. I mean, I think is it Jay Cures? Is that his name it goes? Yeah. As he says that you needed to do this because no one else is doing this, and in the time that you've been doing this, there is still nobody fucking doing this. There is so much dishonesty, so much manipulation. You call it malfeasance, malpractice, whatever we want to call it. It's institutional tinkering and meandering that is paying lip service to a culture, the legacy culture that they don't understand in order to profit from us. And it seems that in America, in the various states, obviously it's broken down state by state, but even in some ways, region by region in some ways, because of the town laws, etc.
I do all the compliance, regulatory, licensing, permitting, and it's horrible. It's hopscotch. It's every state is different. Every city is a little different. It's crazy. And like what you said earlier, the greed, it really is sad. I mean, it's a two-edged sword. I just turned 62. I smoked a joint when I was 16. Felony, go to jail for a long fucking time when I first smoked a joint. And we did it and I went and got my weed from places this guy shouldn't have probably been. But we never had any issues. It was people selling weed, but still it was sketchy. And we had to go back in this park way in the corner where late at night, it was insane. And so my point is the politicians, the only fucking reason they went forward with quasi-legalization, because no state is legal. People need to understand that. Recreational, it's legal now with 30 states. No, it's not. It's legal to a degree because there are still in every single state felony misdemeanors and infractions for cannabis cases. If you have too much than the limit that you can have as a adult user, that's a crime. You have more than an ounce in California, that's a misdemeanor. I mean, there's still crime. So it's not as legal as people think. But my point was the politicians justified it by we can tax the shit out of it. We can make money. And that was the wrong attitude because it's not making the money they thought it would because of the over-regulation, over-taxes, over-taxation, over-licensing. I mean, we could set up a legal business prior to 2018, 25, 30 grand. You want to come in, you want to start a legal cannabis business? We got you. 25, 30 grand, you're set up.
And we're on retainer for a year to cover you.
Now you come into my office to set up a legal cannabis business in the state of California. And we tell people, don't kill the messenger, but, do you have $500,000? As a minimum? Maybe $250 if you're going to do a small delivery service, but still, it's $250,000. We called ourselves the Dream Busters the first year or so of the rollout. We had all the old school coming in, the mom and pops and couples and people who had their little stores, their little grows, and we had to tell them, do you have X amount of money? And of course, no one does. And so, but yeah, the greed on behalf of the government is killing the legal market.
It's fueling the black market, though. That's just going off the hook here in California because they just can't keep up.
And it creates a gray area, as you say. There's a nuance of language. I wanted to actually check, since you're both lawyers. Am I correct with this sign? Where is it?
You have lots of signs there.
These are all my protest signs from many events in the UK. I don't know if my camera's the right way around. So that's the way it is in the UK currently. And so it's legal versus lawful. And it seems to be that, I'm a stickler for words, but I was kicked out of mainstream secondary school. So I may be wrong here, but I do argue with my guests quite often about it. But there's legal, lawful. And so it seems to be that the American legalization, or what I have written in Weed World magazine about, I term neo-legalization, because it seems to be the neoliberals, as in Thatcher, Reagan, those kind of individuals after, I think, cocaine and fucking excess. They're the boys at the top that are funding all of this. So although we've organically had the right people move into the right sort of spaces, in the US, it seems there's at least a slight separation. It's obfuscated. The politicians and it's their mates that are buying it, whether it be, their investors through BlackRock and fucking Vanguard and those sorts of institutions. Over here in the UK, our front bench politicians are invested in these companies. There is open contradictions. There is open hypocrisy. Our former drugs minister a few years ago had to recuse herself from discussing cannabis because her husband was the managing director of a company called British Sugar, who had a side business growing cannabis for GW Pharmaceuticals. And so it seems that we've distilled your sort of beer version. We've now got an absence of what we're trying to get in legalization in Europe, and they've completely ringed the culture. And unless you were going to go be a mouthpiece and just go, this company's amazing, this brand, this whatever, they are steamrolling the culture. And it feels like, at least in California and other few places, you've still got, because of a few of the legacy people got through, because of almost the time between 215 and 64, as in the two props, that gave a credence and an understanding. A lot of politicians, lawyers, people like yourself, professional class went, I can step out of the cupboard, the grow room. I can be public. And that gave a respectability to it that as it then transitioned, they found that weak point, you know?
It's interesting you bring that up because, the funny thing is there's a lot of people from the old market that have made it. They've had brands. One is my son. He had a brand in the old market that was so strong that, he continued into the legal market. Not an easy transition. It is brutal going from driving a Maybach to a Toyota, literally in the new legal market. And we're talking about, a brand that's in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stores in California. But I've seen, and it's good. I don't like to say ha, 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 but a lot of big corps came in, set up shop, spent $9 million on a manufacturing facility for volatile extraction. I represented a client who bought it for 3.1. So there's a lot of these people exiting the industry. A lot of these people have I did another deal just closed the deal where my client bought a license that if it was an ongoing, if it was really making money and working, it'd be worth $3-4 million. They bought it for $425,000. That's half of what it costs to get it up and running. So these are turnkey that people just don't know what they're doing. And it's mind-boggling. Everybody jumped in. And one of the other things, and maybe because we can talk about this for probably ever. We can talk about STFU stuff too next, but everybody wanted to get in, and a lot of attorneys, unlike me, I'll sit there. My brother teases me and gets mad because I probably talk more people out of this than in, because I don't talk them into anything. I don't want you to get involved because a lot of attorneys, let's get started. 10, 20 grand retainer, 500 an hour. Let's go. Okay, let's start. And all of a sudden,
a week later,
need another 10 or 20 grand attorney fees. And now all of a sudden you're in 100 grand. And because I've had people go, I got about 100 grand. I said, dude, no, you're going to burn it. You're going to burn through it. And that's it. I'm going to make my 10 grand and you're going to burn through it and be unhappy. I go, don't do it. If you really want to do it and you think you can fund it, then, go ahead. But I'm telling you up front, don't do it. And even if you can do it, do you really want to do it? The margins went from landlords. We had to get landlords in check. Under the old system, landlords would look the other way and charge 3 times rent. And under the old system, no regulations, no taxes, no licensing. The businesses could go boom, 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 boom. Here's 3 times rent. No problem. Now, landlords got to understand they got to treat them like any other regulated business. And
no, that's not true. They're not like any other regulated business. It's worse, right?
It is worse, but you got to treat them like the market, not like, the green tax. And so there's all kinds of issues in the regulated system that the politicians just don't listen to the stakeholders, people who really know. Because, I always say this too, and you cut me off after this, but I'm not a accountant. I'm not a economist, but we have a 15% excise tax. At the end of the day in California, the effective tax on the consumer, 30 to 40%, maybe higher, depending on the city it's in, the city tax and blah, blah, blah. Wouldn't it be better to charge 2% and have everybody buy legal weed? 2% of a ton than 30% of a little? Do you need to be an economist to figure that one out? I don't think so. They just don't want to listen. They don't want to listen. People got to get out there and vote in the people who are going to change this shit. Otherwise, we're going to be an uphill battle forever.
Yeah, man. To me, obviously, there is discrepancy for all American law. It's proto-British law, I suppose. We still, unfortunately, carry basically everything that was ever written down. So all of the contradictions and bullshit that we currently live under here in the UK. So I'm prescribed cannabis, which this isn't. So me smoking this is a Schedule 1 drug. This has no accepted medicinal benefit. If I then vaporize the product that they then sell me privately, because the NHS isn't allowed to do it because their boys have got to make money, because it's not about the patients, it's about the profit, As long as I vape that's Schedule 2. That means it's a controlled drug, but I can possess it, I can drive with it, I can fly with it. But if I smoke that Schedule 2, it becomes a Schedule 1, and then I can be arrested for its possession. The law, it feels like they're getting it wrong. They're building forward without pausing, going, all these people have come to us for decades and said this thing about cannabis. Okay, let's look at the law. And nobody seems to have looked at the fucking law. They're going, let's add another one and another one and another one. And it ends up the same as tax. You end up with a tax code like this that about 1,000 people understand how to do it and they make the fucking money. And then you'd get another subsection of consultants and specialists. And it's just padded out under this kind of bureaucratic model that as long as them boys are making money, we need to grow and sell the weed. Quick, grow the weed, sell the weed. Because that's what they've tried to make it. And they're going, yeah, but we'll be the legal service. Yeah, we'll be the distributor. We'll be and they think they're going to make fucking billions and trillions. But unless they release the culture, and this is where I argue with this whole, I'm worried about the Health and Human Services and DEA talking to Biden and going, make it Schedule 3. Because if you're going to fucking look at the scheduling, deschedule the fucking thing.
Yeah, it's got to be descheduled. It's got to be descheduled.
Deschedule, ubiquitously decriminalize the individual actions and then watch what happens and then draw the law around what happens. If people go, on average, people consume about this much. Okay, so build the system to that. Don't limit them to it, but build it on average for that, you know?
I mean, like I said, it was the government greed and the corporate greed that got rolled up into all the new regulations, because who the fuck cares if you have more than an ounce? The fuck put an ounce on adult use? Mm-hmm. You don't have a recommendation. You can only have an ounce. Like
arbitrary.
Really? But you can go buy I could go right now to Wine Depot and buy 14 cases of Jack Daniels. Mm-hmm. Right?
Put it in your trunk.
Yeah, but
it just makes no sense. It's not even stigma.
It's not even the possession, though. You could then recoup your losses for that Jack Daniels. Your mates go, I want one of those bottles. You go, all right, it cost me, I don't know the price conversion, $25, whatever. He gives you $25. You haven't sold him that for profit. There was no sale. You've recouped the losses and he's taken a product that you've already paid for. There's no need for taxation and additional steps. This is where I think Colorado and Washington, when they first got over the hurdle and they voted it and they went, fuck, and they paused it till 2014, had a good idea with the gift economy. Because then it allowed for creative exploitation, which is that's what the law is, frankly, in terms of succeeding under the law, in a business sense. And
because that was the thing in California was under Prop 215, and that was the big argument. And they actually had come out with Attorney General guidelines, 98.
The Attorney General guidelines were in 2008.
2008. So fucking 12 years later, because you could possess it, you could grow it, but if you couldn't grow it, how do you get it? You could have it, but how you get it? And so they came out with Attorney General guidelines that came up with collectives. If everybody were patients, one person knows how to grow, everybody contributes, and that was the business model. Really couldn't make a profit, but you can pay for your overhead expenses. And that was the model that ultimately came into play to get around. You can't give it to each other. It's so stupid. You know,
I mean, a member in the cooperative in order to, and that was the whole thing. Some members would be growing it. Some members would just be using it because they couldn't grow it. That was how that was done.
But before that, it was a conundrum because, like you said, you can have it, but I can't give it to you.
And it was still crime first. And these cooperatives who were running under the laws that were created, like my nephew, my brother's kid, would still get busted, charged with felonies. And then you had to prove, oh, no, but we're doing it right. Here's our booklet. Here's everything. And then we get those cases dismissed, but they still got to go through it. And it's still like that now, too. It's still like that now.
We have a system currently in the UK. You guys would kill it over here because our police don't know the law changed 5 years ago. So 2018, because basically what happened is we've got the Misuse of Drugs Act from 1971, which we got in the same way you guys got your Controlled Substances
Controlled
Act.
Substances Act.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember my law here. And that came from obviously the UN conventions in 61 and 71, which then set them in. We all got bullied into it. But then for some reason, our government over here in little old UK in 2001 went, we're going to release this one piece of paper called the Misuse of Drugs Regulations that basically stipulates that a drug can both be a Schedule 1 drug and we can give our mates licenses to do research in case they can make money off it. And so they create these two acts. So then when they legalized medical access under the private prescription systems, they did it under this second document. So they just added another bit on this page that went, oh, and by the way, they can now sell them this product from a private clinic as long as we give them a license from the Home Office. And yet these people down here under the Schedule 1 go, well, why am I on the street? I've got a legitimate reason. The same, I got my doctor at the NHS. He says, cannabis is bad. That's what they tell me. I'm not allowed to talk to you. And then if you go to a clinic by yourself and get prescribed, like I said, if you get stopped in possession, we've had cases where the cops are going, this is a lie. You're lying to me. You look at this isn't real. And they've locked those people up. We've had people being detained and having basically been assaulted because having their blood taken effectively against their will, or well, not as in pinned to it, but forced into a situation of, we'll give you another offence of failure to provide. And people are then providing, even though under the law, we have no reason. If you have a lawful, I'll remind you all, folks, if you have a valid cannabis prescription here in the UK and you are pulled over in your car, you have a lawful defence against the Road Traffic Act 1988. You do not have to submit to a swab or to a blood test or a urinary test. They have to deal with you under Section 4, not Section 5A, and they can do a field sobriety test on you if requested. That's as far as it can go. Just to
it's backwards here. Here, like in California, you don't have to do the field sobriety test, but if they arrest you, you have to give them that chemical test, blood, breath, or urine. Or the DMV takes your license for 1 year.
So it's automatic. If you fail to provide, you lose the license. Wow.
Well, yeah, if you fail to do the blood, breath, or urine after arrest, it's a condition of your license. When you sign for it, you say, if I get arrested, I'll do one of those tests. It's one of the things that's big on our social media, and it's valid in most states. I'm not sure about other countries, but the field sobriety tests in California are voluntary. And most states, we tell people, Google your own state, because I've Googled it, and we don't like to really mention or talk about other state laws in California, but we've Googled other states, and most other states that we've Googled, it's voluntary, pre-arrest. So don't do them. And people don't know that. All it is designed to help you fuck yourself, period, and help them. So, I mean, that's a big difference here, that you don't have to do those pre-arrest.
The other one, I suppose, with a lot of things that you guys do quite well, I've seen you promote, which is something similar to kind of what patients over here, in terms of, again, if you've got an active prescription, the police are not supposed to, for all we don't have this sort of de jure written into the law as per se yet, and we don't really have precedential case law in the same way kind of do over there. We do have a discretionary few cases where police have tried to use the smell of cannabis as probable cause to search a vehicle, and the patient has shown their valid prescription and pot, and yet if still being then searched. That to me is fruit of the poisonous tree, as it were. They've overstepped the mark. So there is defense in law again there. But so what's the situation in California? I see you guys basically telling people not to wind windows down and things like that.
Well, so what we're talking about there, well, first of all, smell in California smell alone is not probable cause for that search. And there are a few states that are starting to do that as well. And this just gets into the whole interaction with law enforcement, where they want to trample over your rights, the bad cops. There are plenty of good cops out there across our country that follow us, that reach out to us and tell us they like what we're doing. It helps keep everybody safe. Those cops that are out there looking for basic enforcement and real crimes, they pull you over, and you didn't use your blinker, you didn't make a safe lane change, you were speeding, and they come up to you, and nothing's going on in your car, and here's your ticket, get on your way. And that's what our 25-word script helps with. while you're politely saying these words that are based on your constitutional rights that we have here and making it easier for law enforcement to get you on your way. Now, those bad cops that are out, they love when you don't know your rights. And they force you to do these field sobriety tests, or, well, you mentioned it earlier, the cops over there they don't know the law changed 5 years ago. We have the same thing here where I get a police report and I start salivating when I see I searched for the smell. We get those cases dismissed. You can't do that anymore. And a lot of cops still don't know that. And people get mad at us for telling it on social media. You're going to tell the cops, they're going to know. Well, good. Then they won't search you, Then, they do other things.
Then you won't have to pay us to go fight something stupid.
Right. And that's really what it's all about is utilizing those rights. And you get pulled over, get a ticket or get a warning. It should never go beyond that. Unless you're, if we're not talking to people who are impaired and falling all over themselves, you shouldn't be driving and you should be arrested if that's what you're doing. This is for the everyday person who's out there who maybe had a couple of tokes, couple glasses of wine, and you're fine. But they will take that, twist it all up, and you'll find yourself in jail.
Yeah. So what's the per se, do you have a per se limit, a de facto limit in Californian law?
0.08
for alcohol. Only for alcohol that exists, the 0.08 blood level, and that's a legal presumption that you're impaired to drive, a presumption that can be rebutted by the defense. It's not an end-all be-all, but it's a legal presumption. But you could also get the same DUI for having any measurable amount of alcohol in your, any one person could have a shot and it could floor them, right? We know those people who have one shot and they're versus the guy who has 10 shots and he's walking, he would never know the difference. So everybody has their own tolerance level. And with cannabis, the nanograms of THC, they up and down the state, the DAs have arbitrarily decided, 4 nanograms is just too much. And there's no legal
nanograms. So
yes.
Is it less? Wait,
that's like nothing.
I'm trying to. Is there a conversion thing? So because over here we have 0.02 0.02 THC, 0.02 milliliters in a liter of blood.
So it's probably converts to right around the same. It sounds like
it's just it's basically a tiny detectable level. Like you could get that level from being in a room with passive smoke. Sort of
30 days ago, and there's still that THC, the THCA, the carboxy THC that's non-psychoactive, still remains in your blood, and they're testing that. That's why it's so important when we get these cannabis DUIs that we have our expert who come in. I just had a case where the judge asked the DA, what's your expert going to say about, the amount of cannabis and and the DA said, I don't know. And I said, well, our expert knows, that's a case that we're looking to hopefully get dismissed. But it's insane that they arbitrarily try to just throw this out there, and there's but
you know what? Here, the better conversation, okay, is now that we know all this bullshit about pot DUIs. 99% of people who come into our office get a pot DUI, not because they were driving impaired, not because they were slurring their words, not because of anything other than their big mouth when the cop asks or says, I smell some. Okay. Should be, I'm not discussing my day, right? That's our script. We'll go over that in a minute. Instead, I smoked. I smoked before I left the house. Like I didn't smoke in the car. I haven't been smoking. I smoked before I left. Okay. How long ago, sir? 4 hours ago. DUI. 1 hour ago, DUI. 12 hours ago, DUI. They didn't see them impaired, and we fight these and get them dismissed all the time. But the person still has to go through all this bullshit.
Well, the danger
if they had just said when asked, when did you last smoke, or what's that I smell, I'm not discussing my day.
Mm-hmm.
And like in California, especially if you give nothing further, the law is they cannot search your car for smell alone unless they develop independent probable cause. If you don't say shit, you're smart, you got nothing in plain view, they're not going to develop anything unless you give it to them, unless you say something. So if that person sat there and just said, I'm not discussing my day, that's it. No matter how many times a cop asks, what did you drink? How much did you have? When did you last do it? When did you last smoke? Doesn't matter. I'm not discussing my day. Then they have to choose. Am I going to give them the ticket or not? Or am I going to detain them or not? And
the danger in saying anything is a jury later on is going to hear that. I smoked 5 hours ago, and unfortunately, reefer madness is here. And you don't know who's sitting in that jury. There's someone going to go, oh my God, you smoked 5 hours. You should be home for 2 days if you smoked like that. You shouldn't be driving, and that's the real danger of making those statements. When you keep your mouth shut and then they arrest you because, well, it smelled and I think you're.
Whatever the reason was.
Doesn't matter.
Be good for them.
We can fight it. We can totally fight it with our expert, and they have no evidence. That's why it's important to not do those field sobriety tests if you're in a state that says you don't have to, because they twist those and turn those around, and
you'll never pass. You will never. I think I've heard one person in 30 years. You'll never. They're designed to have you fail. Period. Stone cold sober. You're not gonna pass those things. Well, so if we urge anybody to, if in your state or your country, Google it. If it is in fact required as a condition of when you get your license, which is a privilege, not a right, then follow the rules and do it. But otherwise, don't.
Well, we've seen the videos of completely sober people thinking, well, okay, I'm good, I'll do it. And then they get arrested because the cop is able to, subjectively say, well, you missed your nose by a millimeter there. It was supposed to be the tip, and you're completely sober. So, and we, that's some of the pushback on social media we get from people. Well, if you're not hiding anything, if you're not drunk or high, why don't you just do it? Well, that's exactly why, because sober people who are not impaired get arrested and then have to spend thousands of dollars dealing with getting it dismissed, which ultimately, it's going to get dismissed. But you have to go through it. You got to go through it because you didn't know your rights.
Let's go through the script.
Yeah, sure.
Right. So as we said on Shut the Fuck Up Fridays, we do the script review, which we also on our stories do a daily script review, because we urge people to do this in front of the mirror with your friends, role play. Like that's what we do here. So I'm the cop and I pull you over, come up to your window and say, what the fuck is that smell? What's going on?
Why'd you pull me over?
Are you a smart guy? You know what? You were speeding. That's why I pulled you over. Now you're going to tell me, I told you, you can tell me what's the smell? Why does it smell like a dead skunk?
I'm not discussing my day.
I ask you about your day. The skunk in your car. You got drugs in here? Do you have guns? Are you in a gang?
Am I being detained?
Gang?
Free to go. Am I being detained or am I free to go, sir?
Well, with that attitude, you're detained. You get out of the car.
I get out of the car. We tell people, put your keys in your pocket, lock your door, shut it, listen to what they tell, go to the curb.
Now tell me where the drugs are in this car. And if you don't have that much, I don't even care if it's pot.
Am I being detained or am I free to go?
You're already detained. Okay. Now, if you have a little, I'll let you go.
I invoke the fifth.
You want a fifth of Jack Daniels? What?
I invoke the fifth.
I don't care about your fifth. Do you think anyone on the side of the road cares about your fifth? Tell me, look, this could go the easy way or the hard way. You could be out of here in 5 minutes.
Sir, I'd like an attorney present for any further questioning.
Can I search your car?
I do not consent to searches.
All right, well, based on this smell, I'm going to search your car and do whatever the fuck I want. end. And then after he gets arrested and that cop did whatever the fuck he wants, 6 months later, we're going to get that case dismissed because he did an illegal search. He didn't consent to it. Never, ever can. That's another thing we get too. Well, if you don't have anything to hide, well, let him look through your car. Guess what? You do that, you'll find yourself on the side of the road, everything ripped out, the seats ripped out, and then, oh, we didn't find anything. Sorry.
Or no
recourse.
Or no, we have probably the best example of never consent to a search, no matter what. We had a client who was just getting off parole or probation, and got pulled over, and the cop asked to search the car, and he's been clean, sober, nothing, right? Nothing. Okay, yeah, I got nothing.
It was a car that he bought 5 years before that, used.
He bought this car 5 years before use. So ultimately, they found a bullet in between the seat, way far underneath. One bullet. Tell him.
The guy who sold him the car, him and his son used to go to the gun range, and a bullet was left in there. And in California, there's that penal code, felon with ammunition. So he got a probation violation. He got another felony charge for that bullet, and and we had to cut a deal, and he had to go through a bunch of shit. And the sad part is, had he not consented to a search, and they were searching because of smell, we would have got the case dismissed. And that's one in particular that it's hard to swallow, but a great example of you don't know what's in your car. Who, what did your friend drop the other day? What did your kid, this, that, who the fuck knows what's in the cracks and crevices? Because you don't look there, but the cops will if you give them the opportunity to. So yeah, never, ever consent to a search. And it's just all about utilizing and using the rights that you're afforded, wherever you are, whatever country you're in. And
peacefully engage your rights. That's what we know. We're not anti-law enforcement. We're anti-bad law enforcement. I mean, there's plenty, like we were saying earlier, there's plenty of really good law enforcement, but it's a hard, thankless job. I think they should get paid more. But I think too that the culture of law enforcement needs to change. Training. Instead of you watch Live PD, they tell you up front that, hey, when we walk up to your car, the minute we walk up, we're looking for a reason to get in it. Mm-hmm. Instead of you walk up because the blinker wasn't working, you were coming the opposite direction and you made a left turn and they noticed your left blinker wasn't on and maybe it's out. That's a public safety hazard. So, hey, sir, your blinker's out, either warning, fix a ticket, thank you very much, be on your way, be safe. That could be dangerous.
They should carry a light bulb. Here's a light bulb.
Instead, they think, no blinker, okay, how am I going to get in the car? And that's just how they're trained. So, I mean, I don't hate them for that, but because that's how they're trained. It's sad.
Us versus them.
But then you have your constitutional lawyers in the United States who are very much on our side, and they refuse to enforce a lot of the bullshit and abide by the Constitution, which is all we're saying. Is we're not being dicks, we're not being assholes, but you have the right to not discuss your day. They don't have to teach you your rights. And that's another misconception people have. They didn't read me my rights. I was talking to them, but they didn't read. They don't need to. Up until a certain point in time per case law that, okay, at this point in time, the law says you need to tell them about their rights to not talk and blah, blah, blah. But you actually have that right you wake up with. So you can invoke it anytime you want. You don't have to wait for them to advise you of it. That's just when they can talk and bullshit with you for a long time before they have to tell you. So everything you have set up till then is fair game. Yeah. So, and then once we had a really good question recently where if you invoke the fifth, they keep talking to you and asking you questions and you answer and you break. What happens? You waived your right. You waived your right to be silent then. If you say, I want my lawyer present, then they actually have to stop by law. So if they then continue after you've asked for your lawyer and then you break, we probably can get that thrown out because by law, they're supposed to stop asking questions when you say, I want my lawyer present.
That's the Sixth Amendment. And, these 25 words, with the exception of I invoke the fifth, apply to many other countries. We've learned from other attorneys and barristers and other, like the UK. You don't have a Fifth Amendment, but you certainly have the right to shut the fuck up.
Yeah, I mean, what do they call it? Policed by consent, I believe is the euphemism.
Yeah, they walk up and ask you, like, can I do this or something? I remember we talked to that guy. It's been a couple of years now. We talked to somebody in the UK, another attorney, a barrister, and he was explaining. It was like, wow.
Yeah, the UK system. I mean, you guys. I mean, what's that fucking movie? My Cousin Vinny.
My Cousin Vinny,
fucking love that movie. I was only introduced to it the other year, a couple of years ago, and I was like, how the fuck have I missed this? I love legal dramas and like just legal fucking movies, and it was just like, this is movie. Yeah, because again, it's all factual and correct in the procedure, and watching him go through it isn't that cliched kind of, oh, I'm now the best thing ever. He fucks up, but he does it in an endearing way and in such a way that it's within the confines of the system. Unfortunately, over here in the UK, our legal apparatus, our judiciary is so fucking of a certain class and group. And I've seen it. I've been what we call Mackenzie friend, which is you're allowed somebody that's non-legal representative for like emotional support in court as a defendant. And we can't give legal advice or whatever, but we can air quotes, comfort. And
do you have defense lawyers?
Yeah, we have solicitors and provided solicitors, but the problem is they plead with our bar system. So our solicitors can't challenge the law. So your defense can't challenge the law. They have to go with it. So if you get a public defendant, every time they will tell you to plead guilty without fail with a drug charge. Were you in possession? There's the thing. You said, yeah, you're done. They don't tell you about mitigation. They don't tell you about understanding how to best protect yourself, because for them it's a paycheck, they're in and out. If you then go to legal counsel, one of the things that's happened in the UK is a lot of these former barristers and people quite high up in the legal circles suddenly go, we can make money as cannabis consultants and drug consultants, and what we'll do is we'll charge all of our mates who are rich and posh when their kids get caught with the drugs. We'll tell them what we know, the same as that. We go, all right, if you tell them this sentence, say this and this, charges drop, boom, gone. And Jimmy gets off with 2 keys of coke. But then my mates that get caught with like 5 plants, they're saying, we're going to give you 2 years today unless you say guilty. And this is his defense barrister. Wow. Like, instead of actually going with him, he sat literally leaving his defense barrister, going out, talking to the fucking judge and pleading not for his defense, but going like, what can we do to not drag this on? We don't want to have to deal with this. And like our CPS, our Crown Prosecution Service, because this is the weird thing in this fucking country, because we're a fucking monarchy. Fucking cunts. The offense of possession. Guess who the victim is? Because we need a victim in our system. The victim is the Crown.
The crowd?
The Crown. The Crown. So you're doing this, and it's the same thing as basically what's happening in America, is because you're not paying into that system ultimately. Because I mean, we've been the world drug dealers since the 1400s. We effectively built the Silk Road. Yeah, there was spices, but it was the drugs we were after. And then you look at what we did with the Opium Wars, what we did in India, and the eventual creation of Pakistan, and the segregation of these areas were for resources, quite a lot of them drugs. I mean, look at Haiti. The British created global slave trade because we wanted fucking sugar. That was it, our royalty. We're like, oh, we like this sugar shit, and we've got tea. Oh, a bit of sweet. Oh, we like that. And so because they wanted a fucking cup of tea, we had to destroy the peninsula of like India and Bangladesh and all that region, and we enslaved the Caribbean. It's fucking mental.
Right. Yeah, no, it's crazy. It is crazy. But
so the question I wanted to ask you related to the other point, because I sidebarred a bit there. That's a legal term, right? We're doing quite well here. We're keeping on theme.
Yeah,
sidebar. What was my point? Police, and that, as you were saying about the interaction, do you feel, because it's from my research, I mean, over here, we had a former prime minister, and he's created modern policing, Sir Robert Peel, and he created 12 points, which was called the Peelian Principles. And these were the ideals for the police to live up to. And these included things that quite similar to constitutional rights over in the States in terms of how the police should conduct themselves and act. And prior to the war on drugs, they were the Bobby on the beat. You know, they were that hello kind of that
right,
quintessential kind of thing. That's what you think of when you think like 60s cop. They're benign. Anything above that was the military, and that was all right, we were in shit, and you were grateful to have it because of whatever reason. Then the militarization and the war on drugs made the police and the public oppositional. And so then it created this as Neil Woods, who's a former undercover cop here in the UK, worked for a decade plus, going in on the street level and working through. And he ended up with like PTSD and lots of mental health issues because he realized after years that he was just destroying the lowest, most vulnerable people in society. He was tearing apart communities. He wasn't policing communities. He was setting them up. And so my question is, how do you think, obviously coming from the legal system, being quite close to police, but also them being cannabis consumers, how do you kind of feel those relationships interconnect?
With police and cannabis consumers, it really depends on who the individual law enforcement officer you're dealing with.
I mean, I think overall it's getting better, but you still have your law enforcement look at it as dope.
Mm.
I mean, they use it as the trigger for the DUI investigation now. You know, the ones that know that smell alone, and even if you have a little bit in plain view, there's case law now that says that's still not enough to do the search. You know, so it really depends. You know, we had a guy who was smoking on the beach, and the particular cop had a problem, you know, with it, and, you know, cited him and gave him the violation. And that's something else just throw out really quickly that we usually talk about when we talk about, like you mentioned, you have your prescription over there. You know, are you allowed to go out and smoke in public?
Can't smoke it at all. I've got to vaporize it.
Okay, can you vaporize in public?
Yeah, I mean, the laws, because of it, technically under the UK law, it's considered more of like an asthma inhaler. It's a medical device. So with discretion, because we have like the Disability Discrimination Act, which means they've got to make reasonable adjustments for our disability. So some venues, some pubs will let you vape inside the pub. Some will ask you to go outside or whatever. And it's about building that relationship in individual spaces.
At least you have that. See, here in our over here, it's you can buy it, but you can't smoke it anywhere if you're using it just for, and this is California I'm talking about, and most other states that have medicinal kind of follow this too a little bit. But in California, for our example, if you're 21 and over and you go buy it in a legal place, you can't smoke it anywhere in public. You got to go to a private place, your home, underneath the cover, whatever. And if you have your physician's recommendation, which would be akin to your prescription, then there's 5 places you can't smoke. Anywhere else is fair game. And those become in a motor vehicle that's operating, while operating a boat 1,000 feet from a school or youth facility, on a school bus, or a no smoking zone. And the no smoking zone encompasses like Disneyland or anywhere that says no smoking here. You know, as far as we know, one of the only states I think got it right is New York. Yeah. New York, when they came out and finally did it, they're like, you can go up and down town, you can wherever anyone smoke
a cigarette.
Yeah,
you can smoke.
And I thought
I've been to Times Square, stood there with a cop right behind me, going, "Is this really okay?" I'm like, I'm taking a hit, going, "Is this really happening?" Mm-hmm. And yeah, they got that right. They got that.
It's about all they got right, but you know, at least it's something. But it's you know, it and that's why we recommend anybody in California, if you smoke even just once a day or once a week, go get your physician's recommendation so you can do it more freely.
100%. I mean, I found some interesting loopholes in California law because as I told you sort of before we came on air, I did that 6,000-mile road trip where I landed in Colorado and drove around. One of the first things I realized after I walked out of a dispensary in Colorado, shout out Fox Cannabis, cheers for the love you guys. I got back to my motel and was like, shit, yeah, the law says technically I can't smoke anywhere. And I was looking around and I was going, there's a state park nearby sort of thing. And I went, wait, that's federal land. Fuck that, don't do that. So okay, stay away from that. I was like, this park, what's this? This is in this township. What is this township rule? And I had to fucking Google all this shit. And I ended up walking in to the reception dude and I kind of mentioned to him and he went, $250 is our smoking charge. And what do you mean? I went, you're not allowed to smoke in the rooms. And if people smoke in our rooms, and I'm like, are you saying tobacco? And he's like, I'm saying if you smoke in our rooms. And he didn't say it, but so in Colorado, he was basically like, it's $250. If we find out when you leave that you smoked marijuana in there, I hate the fucking word, but that's the way he described it. Then we'll have to charge you $250. So I went, it's a tax then. So that occupies as a private space. And then I did a bit more Googling. I was looking at California law, and you can maybe help me clarify this because it's been going around in my head since I read about it. In Californian law, when it says about consumption in one's own home, or one's own home is defined as owning the home. So your landlord can stop you consuming in the property that you rent because you don't own your home, but it's your home.
That's correct.
That's fucking real.
Yep.
We get lots of calls from people like, I'm in my apartment, I'm a medical
Private
patient.
property. That other guy owns it. He can say what to do on his property.
That falls within the no smoking zone for medical patients.
Yeah.
And that's just the way we tell them, move. You got to move.
You have dry counties and regions. Because I spent a night, as I was again saying, when I ran out of money. So on my way down from Eureka, I think it was, I spent 2 nights in Fresno. In a roadside motel, deliberately staying in roach motels and was just observing the local culture as one does. And again, found out there, he's like, yeah, this whole, at the time in 2008, it was a no-go. And I was looking at the demographics and I was doing a bit of Googling and I was like, that's weird. The population here is like 70 to 80% Hispanic and Black. Then I looked at, again, the class and the economics and I went, so where are all the shops? And so there's about 800,000 people here of these certain groups that are not allowed access. So they can go and purchase weed, but then the majority of them are not homeowners, so they can't consume it. So they have to then travel out of this region. So all they're doing, as you said, is creating a hotspot for at least the perception of a black market or unregulated space. So they can go, he's got cannabis. Statistically speaking, he doesn't have the transport to get to a region outside of Fresno to purchase it. And so therefore, like, it's almost like giving me the probable cause to then just fucking harass that group of people. But if you go to a more affluent area, and there's like 6 or 7 dispensaries owned by, local residents that always had the money and the movers and shakers. And the racial and class discrepancy that is inbuilt intrinsically into the modern war on drugs seems to have translated over somehow into this
It's the cities.
legalization.
It's the cities. Every city had the ability to fucking opt out, to say no. And we still have probably, I would say it might be coming up. It might be coming up to a third of all the states and counties in the state of California. A third allow cannabis activity. Only a third. And there's like 480 fucking something cities.
482 cities in the state.
Counties or something like that. So it's just absurd that these cities are still hanging on, man. I mean, now the pendulum and the dominoes are starting to fall. More and more cities are coming online, but I still think it's approaching or maybe just over the third, because before it was less than a third. And so it's a gradual, like, okay, the sky's not falling, and more cities are coming online. But when they come online, it's probative too. It's not like, come on, open up your shop. What do you need to open up a regular smoke shop? Right? What do you need? There's not that much to open up a smoke shop, whatever, a boutique. Why is it $1 million to open up a fucking pot shop? That doesn't make sense. Let us open up, and the good ones will fail. The good ones will succeed, and the bad ones will fail, like any other business. And let's move on. But no, they got to overcomplicate it.
Well, it seems, again, it's deliberate. It's what this consultant class do. They have to create obfuscation and over specialization. So
you
then
would love to talk to our friend Sean from Weed for Warriors. He's oh my God, you guys would have a great talk regarding classes and the oligarchy and all that. I don't get too deep into that stuff, but he just, it's true though. It's like the oligarchy's running our weed system out here.
One of the things I often quote here to get people to have an understanding of kind of how this works. So in 1066, and I've just triggered every British school kid that ever heard this of, the Battle of 1066. And that's one of the only things we learned. Basically, the Normans landed, William the Conqueror, they destroyed the Saxons and became kind of the modern country we are. Bear in mind, it's like 1,000 fucking years ago. a recent analysis, or quite recent-ish, especially relevant to 1066, analysis of kind of wealth distribution of the UK found that the Norman descendants still have by far the majority of the wealth of this country. And this is after us colonizing and fucking up the world and creating empire and everything else. That kind of concentration of wealth naturally holds itself. So whenever we have these new blips and bubbles, we saw the same with tech and Silicon Valley. So initially that was this real explosion of creative counterculture people thinking, Timothy Leary and the movement in the 60s, born out of the beatnik movement, and this kind of just rebellion against the establishment, and this kind of creeping, I'm going to trigger some conspiracy theories here, globalization and, one world trade and everything that was created out of, the monetary fund and the, what ultimately became the United Nations. That power is concentrated and has continued to. So then when new technologies arrived, at first they were disruptive, but then they very quickly got adopted into this system of how best to use. So now the CIA, NSA, GCHQ, and all the rest of them fucking love you on Facebook. They love you on Instagram and Snapchat, and going, oh, it deletes after 24 hours. Yeah, but do you know where that picture is going to be forever? Do you know what that data is going to do for? And it's
that's crazy.
The same thing I feel is happening with cannabis. Is it's just their attempts to go, no, if we hold it enough and they don't have just enough of it, and then we can medicalize enough of it, and then we turn it into pills and magic potions, and we remove it so far from the plant that then they don't associate it to the plant. They forget they can grow it. They forget that they can change it, because cannabis is the ultimate socialist resource. From a seed, 1 trillion plants can be born. Nothing else in the world does that,
That's a great place. We got a heart out that we got to jump on a call right now, but that's a great ending right there, because yes, that plan is absolutely fucking amazing. We appreciated being on the show. We appreciated you having us on and getting our word out there to shut the fuck up, and follow us at Brothers at Law across all social media, and hopefully we'll do this again soon sometime. But we got to jump on this other conference call, my brother.
Yeah, no worries. It has been a pleasure, gentlemen. Thank you for your time, and we'll do a part 2 at some point, I'm sure.
One other thing. Our toll-free line, 855-WASLAW, because we do have a worldwide attorney referral network system where we've talked to and connected with attorneys, not only just in the United States, but in certain other countries. So if you got a problem, we might be able to get you to a good, honest, ethical attorney that we have personally vetted out. So thank you very much for having us, Simpa. It was a pleasure.
Indeed. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, speak soon. Take it easy. Peace. Bye. Well, there you go, folks. That was Marc and Craig Wasserman, Pop Brothers at Law. I got a lot of notes. This week and a lot of questions. Hope to get a bit more time, but that was brilliant in terms of what we actually got covered there, and a good introduction. Like we sort of said there, I think we'll get them on for a part 2 before too long, because there's a lot more I want to discuss there. I think there's a lot more to cover. I want to thank them both for their time. Great guys, obviously very busy with what they do, given the kind of fragility and the faults that are currently present in Californian state cannabis laws. But I think we touched on them quite well. I think we covered some of the British law as well, and the kind of juxtaposition between the two. And I didn't get too ranty to burn the system to the ground this week. So hope you enjoyed that, folks. Hope you found it useful. All the links below. As Marc was saying there at the end, did have a presence in some countries around the world, and obviously I do have a slow, organically growing listenership in many countries. So if you happen to be in your region and you are in trouble and they can help, hit them up. Either way, follow them on social media, because they have some brilliant advice that, as I say, translates into other legal systems around the world. So they may be able to provide you with some education, information, and if nothing else, some fucking entertainment. All right, folks. So if you really enjoyed this, please do give us a like, share, and a subscribe, a rating, whatever it is you do on your platform, to show appreciation wherever you are listening, watching, enjoying this podcast from. And if you really enjoyed it, please do check us out on patreon.com/the Simpa Life, where for less than a cup of coffee a week, you can help me keep a month, either, really. I suppose it's the same kind of time frame. But you'd be charged monthly is I think what I'm getting to there. You can help me keep the lights on this little project of mine. Yeah, check us out on all social media platforms at The Simpa Life, and check out thesimpalife.com for blogs, articles, and exclusive content. Also my latest in Weed World magazine. All right, we'll be back next week with somebody. It'll be awesome. You'll love it. I'll love it. It'll be awesome. All right, peace and love, folks. All right, folks. No, fuck's sake, I'm too high for this.